Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk. Today's topic is new capabilities enabled with the Finance and Operations Convergence with the Power Platform. My name is David, and I'll be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this session through Teams live events, and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. This session is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. When you join this event, your name, email address, and/or phone number may be viewable by other session participants in the attendee list. By joining, you're agreeing to this experience. The recording will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. If you have questions for the presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. Our presenters will be responding to your questions throughout the event and during a Q&A segment near the end. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Jared Hall, Principal Program Manager. Jared, over to you.
Thank you, David. As David mentioned, I am Jared Hall. I'm a Principal Program Manager on the Dynamics 365 team working on Finance and Operations and Dataverse. Based in Bellevue, Washington. And so I'm joined by Rahul Agarwal, Principal Engineering Manager, who's also in Washington, as well as Sudhakar Reddy, who is joining us from Hyderabad. He's an engineer who did a lot of the work on the features that we're talking about, as well as Rahul, and they'll be helping with Q&A throughout the session. So feel free to keep those questions coming in the Q&A as we go through this session. And we'll have those answered as we go, but also have time at the end for additional Q&A. So as we talk about convergence, and to set the context, as we look at the Microsoft Cloud, it's clear that the all-up Dynamics strategy is dependent on streamlined native integrations across applications and platforms. Dynamics 365 is the most comprehensive set of intelligent business applications in the world today. And Dynamics 365 is the only business platform that natively integrates with Microsoft 365, Microsoft Azure, and Power Platform. So as we look at the connection between Microsoft Dynamics 365 and Power Platform, we see that they are built together and tightly integrated to accelerate insights and workflows across the organization. There's incredible opportunities with the immense Power Platform toolset of application and BI development. It's bringing these together, the data, the business logic of Dynamics 365 with Power Platform provides huge value for users, but not only users, also for admins and developers. In this session, we're going to focus specifically on how we're tightening the integration between Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations and the Power Platform. We call this the convergence between the platforms. When we talk about convergence of finance and operations apps with Power Platform, we look at it across several categories. We look at bringing together the data and events. We look at security, data storage and access, admin experiences, and we look at developer and management experiences for environment and application lifecycles. The vision to enable the converged experiences across finance and operations and Power Platform is one admin, one user, and one developer. That for those personas, we're bringing together the experiences and converging those together so you have a converged platform of a fully integrated experience. We've made a lot of progress on this vision, but there's still a lot of work to completely realize the vision. In this session, we'll talk through the progress we've made with functionality that became generally available in October with the Dynamics 365 2021 release Wave 2. To start out, just as a quick demonstration of the functionality that we'll talk about that became generally available and kind of the idea of converging the two platforms, I want to show a quick demo demonstrating the functionality and technologies that are used that we'll talk about through the rest of the session. Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations continues to come closer together with the Power Platform. Finance and operations, business events, and data events are automatically enabled in Microsoft Dataverse, enabling streamlined business processes. In this example, Contoso is a manufacturing company that uses customer engagement for their front office, finance and operations for their back office, and the Power Platform to tie it all together. ReliCloud, a potential customer, comes to Contoso's online portal and reviews the product list and decides to begin onboarding as a potential reseller. In the reseller registration form, they provide some basic information and submit their request to become a reseller of Contoso's products. When the submission completes successfully, we can open the CRM hub and see that ReliCloud is now added as a new potential account. When the new record is created, the data event of creating the new account record triggers some business logic through a Power Automate flow for Contoso to initiate onboarding the new reseller. First, if we switch over to Outlook, we see that a confirmation email is sent to ReliCloud letting them know that Contoso's onboarding team will be connecting with them shortly. In Teams, we see a message is posted letting the Contoso team know they can begin onboarding the new reseller. For onboarding, there's a lot more detail that we'll need to add after negotiations with the customer. Selecting the link opens a form where we can enter additional information after negotiations with ReliCloud. Your processes are likely more complex than this, but in this simplified example, we'll enter a credit limit and save. We can then create an invoice for this customer. Let's create an invoice by entering a document amount, entering a quantity for services rendered, and post. Posting the free text invoice will trigger processes in the back office application to ensure all account records and financials are updated correctly. The posting business event will also trigger other business processes. In Teams, we've created a message so those who need to know stay informed. Additionally, if we navigate back to our CRM hub, we see that ReliCloud previously had 0 invoices. Through a plugin created using the Power Platform Tools add-in, we're able to trigger an update to the record on the posting business event. When we refresh, we see that the invoice count has been incremented by 1. Bringing finance and operations business events and data events into the Power Platform enables you to streamline and optimize your business processes. So this is a pretty straightforward demo with a simple use case using Power Portals, Power Apps, Power Automate, and some triggers. But what's exciting about this scenario is that it pulls together the Power Platform and all the tools of the Power Platform, consuming data and business logic from finance and operations without even having to open finance and operations as an application. We're converging that functionality together into the Power Platform to enable that tool set for users, admins, and developers. And it's inspiring to watch, it's kind of a straightforward, simple scenario, but it's inspiring to watch the customer and partner community utilize these technologies and seeing the scenarios that can be built out. And through the remainder of the session, we're going to dive deep into some of these technologies and look at the ones specifically that have been enabled by functionality in the 2021 release wave 2. We'll talk through 3 areas of enhancements made with the Microsoft Power Platform integration for Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. And these are split up into 3 categories that we'll talk through. Streamlined setup and configuration that automates many of your configuration experiences, data integration, and the bulk of our time we'll spend talking about events with the bulk of our time we're going to spend talking about events, so that with the enhanced integration of business logic across applications and platforms with those business events and data events, and see how that business logic can be applied across platforms. So starting out, one thing to note is that the features that we're going to talk through are dependent on Power Platform integration being enabled for your finance and operations environment. If you're not sure whether it's enabled for your environment, the easiest way for you to confirm whether it is to check the status in the environment details in Lifecycle Services. There are 4 options for enabling the Power Platform integration. The first one is when you're creating a new environment. When you're deploying that environment in Lifecycle Services, there's a checkbox that you can mark that says Enable Power Platform integration for this environment. Marking that enables the integration and lights up the functionality that we'll talk about in this section. If you don't enable it during deployment, you can do so after. The second option is in Lifecycle Services. In the environment details, there's an option to enable the Power Platform integration, and that links it to the Power Platform environment that's created at the time of deployment. The third, there are scenarios where you may want to link your finance and operations environment to a selected Power Platform environment. And we've kind of laid out those scenarios and some of the scenarios where you may want to select a specific environment in the documentation listed at the top right. And you can read through some more details. But if you run into one of these scenarios, currently we don't have the option in Lifecycle Services for you to select the environment that you want to link finance and operations to for the Power Platform integration. That functionality is coming in a future release, but at this point, we still want as many customers as possible to take advantage of the Power Platform integration and start using this technology to get it up and running for integrating across the platforms. So if you run into one of these scenarios and you want to enable this, open up a support ticket for now. Tell us which environments you want linked, and our engineering team will get that taken care of for you. We want you to get up and running with this as soon as possible. And then the fourth option, this functionality is available for cloud-hosted development environments, but there are some additional configuration steps that you would need to go through for that development environment, and those are laid out in the documentation listed at the top. So if you haven't yet enabled the integration, one of the calls to action, one of the key points that we want to talk about in this session is that this is a great opportunity to enable new capabilities for your finance and operations environment, and encourage you to go out and get that, enable this and start taking advantage of the functionality. So let's talk about the rest of the session and see what functionality is available with this Power Platform integration. The first one is data integration setup. It's all about streamlining configuration for your data integration scenarios. For data integration, there are two primary technologies that we use for integrating data between finance and operations and the Power Platform in your Microsoft Dataverse database. The first is dual write, which is a bidirectional sync. It's a tightly coupled real-time bidirectional sync between finance and operations and Microsoft Dataverse. So the data gets physically written into both databases at runtime. This is appropriate for scenarios where you need that data to physically sit in both finance and operations and Microsoft Dataverse and have it integrated in real time. The second technology is virtual tables. This enables your create, read, update, and delete operations against finance and operations data from the Power Platform, but it's exposed virtually. So that data isn't physically sitting in Microsoft Dataverse, but it gives you the ability to interact with that data as if it were sitting physically in Microsoft Dataverse. But that data gets written back into finance and operations, so you're interacting with that data in real time, but it sits physically in finance and operations. Now, these two technologies aren't new, and hopefully many of you on the call, or most of you on the call, are using these technologies to integrate data between finance and operations and the Power Platform. But what is new is that the configuration for these data integration technologies is automated when the Power Platform integration is enabled. Where previously there was some manual configuration to create Azure app registrations and secrets, you may have to set up integration users and define permissions. And so there's additional configuration that you had to go through to set up these technologies. This is all now done automatically, saving you time and getting up and running with data integration between the platforms. For virtual tables, after that initial one-click experience for setting up the configuration, you would just need to select the entities that you want enabled as virtual tables in Power Platform to make those available for use in integrating your data. The next area of enhancement is in authentication and authorization. Their finance and operations users are automatically added in Dataverse when the Power Platform integration is enabled. So when that's enabled, there are three scenarios. First is when a new finance and operations environment is created. At that point, any users on the tenant that have a finance and operations license will get automatically created in the Power Platform in Dataverse. Second, anytime a new user is created in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, if they have the right license for Dynamics 365 assigned to them, then they are also created in Power Platform. And if the user begins using Dynamics 365 in Power Platform, or for example, they sign into the environment or they start making calls against those virtual entities, if they haven't yet been synced to the Power Platform and they have the right license, then that user record automatically gets created. So we're simplifying the authentication and authorization experience for finance and operations data in Power Platform, streamlining and bringing those closer together. In this next section, we'll talk about the integration of business logic using business events and data events. We'll first look at Dataverse business events and data events which are introduced in Dataverse with the custom API. We'll then see how finance and operations uses this Dataverse feature to implement its events and bring that business logic into the Power Platform. So when we talk about events, we categorize them into two different types of events. The first are data events. These are events that are associated with operations that are happening directly against that database record. These are the create, update, and delete operations that happen against a record in the database table. When these events happen, we can then now use these as triggers for additional business logic. If you're doing these on native tables that are native to the native to your Dataverse environment, then these would be create, update, and delete operations. If you're registering an event against a virtual table or an external a virtual table from an external system, then you would register the event against the onCreated, onUpdated, and onDeleted operations for those tables. So those are data events. The second category is business events, and these are differentiated by business events being high value activities based in business logic in an application. For example, these are activities like invoice posted, payment approved, collection letters sent, or a status that's updated on a record within the application where business logic is run, and that business logic happening within an application needs to act as a trigger for an additional activity that happens in an integrating system. The integrating systems can then subscribe to these events to trigger additional business logic. So when we look at Dataverse business events, there are several things to note. First being that they enable a model for business logic extensibility. By having this business logic and these triggers happen across platforms, we can enable them. You can write plugins to extend that business functionality from finance and operations or any other integrating system into Power Platform and use that as a trigger for additional functionality. It enables a first-class construct for first and third-party events in Dataverse. So those events can sit physically in Dataverse and be triggered from the external systems. The business processes can communicate outcomes. And this can be done with your request and response parameters that can be associated with the custom API. When you create a custom API for that business event, which is the implementation of that business event in Dataverse, you assign a response API to it, which then when that event occurs, responses get sent to communicate the outcome, and you can the additional business logic from your plugin or your Power Automate or whatever your follow-up activity is being triggered by that action can then be dependent on the outcomes of the response parameters of that custom API, that business event. This enables synchronous integrations across platforms and applications, or asynchronous integrations across platforms and applications. It enables advanced notification capabilities across organizational boundaries as well. We're not limited to just the organizational boundaries. Any organization or application can listen to these events, and we can send these events to additional endpoints, really expanding the possibilities of what you can do with these events in your extension of the business logic. So that is the background. Let's also look at the event categorization just to see how are these laid out and how are we going to see these once we get into the Power Platform. They're categorized in Dataverse with a top level catalog. There we have catalogs and catalog assignments, and catalogs, there's a top level catalog that's a single catalog for the solution that helps us categorize all the additional business events and data events that will be assigned to those catalogs. The second level catalog is to categorize them. So it's you'll have multiple categories that are catalogs assigned to the top level catalog. And then below that, we have our different event types associated with each of those categories. So you can have table events, which are those table activities, the created, updated, and deleted activities, actions that can happen against a record will trigger a business event or a data event and can be a catalog assignment in that custom API catalog. The custom API is an unbound business event, and we also have the ability to create custom process actions. So this is the kind of the hierarchy of that event categorization. And one place that you'll see that it kind of demonstrates this hierarchy of how it's set up is when an action is performed, Dataverse trigger in Power Automate. When you have that catalog assignment for the custom API and it's assigned to a catalog, that will make it available within these Dataverse triggers so that you can use that as a trigger for your flows. So you'll see that there's a top-level catalog. For example, finance and operations uses one for the top-level solution. Each of these is broken down by category. If it's an event that is bound to a table, you would see the table name. Otherwise, you would see you may also have to select the action name. And you'd select none if it's not bound to a table. So with that as the background of business events in Microsoft Dataverse and this new functionality with the custom API, let's look at a quick example that demonstrates how this is set up within Dataverse itself. The custom API allows you to create your own APIs to be used as business events to trigger business logic within the Power Platform. There are a few ways that you can create your own custom APIs, but let's look at how this can be done within the Maker portal in the Power Platform. Let's look at the solutions that I have in this environment and look at one that I've created to create a custom API. Creating a new API is fairly simple. On the new menu, we select more, we select other, and from this menu, we see we can create a custom API. We can create the associated API request parameters, any response properties that we want to have selected, and then create a catalog assignment that assigns that custom API to a catalog. All this can be done fairly quickly from this new menu. I've already set one up, and let's take a look at what that looks like. Let's select the custom API and see the approved customer account custom API that I have created that represents an action taken within the system when a new customer account has been approved. So in this action, if you're creating a new one, there's just a few things that you would need to fill out. Fill out your name properties, give it a description, select your binding type. In this case, I've selected global, which means it will be an unbound action that's not bound to an entity. If you select to bind it to an entity, then you don't necessarily need to create request parameters because the entity will be included in the request parameters when the action has been invoked. You can select additional properties. Down at the bottom, you can select the plugin type. If you've written a plugin that invokes this business event, this is where you would select that. In our case, for this demo, we'll just invoke it directly from the API. From here, we can see the request parameters. And I have created two called the account name and request ID. And then we can also look and see the catalog assignments to see that I have assigned this custom API to the Contoso Manufacturing Customer Catalog. So now that we've created this custom API, how can we use it? One way that we can use it is by invoking, when it's invoked, trigger some business flow using Power Automate. So let's go back to our Maker portal and take a look at our flows that can be set up to trigger an event based on this new custom API. So I've created a flow that's called when an account is approved. And if we look at the details of this flow, we see that I have selected to use the Dataverse when an action is performed trigger. And selecting the top level catalog for my solution, selecting the catalog category, helps narrow it down to the specific action that I want to select. The table name is none because this is an unbound action. If this were bound to an entity, then we would have to select the table. In the action name, we would select approved customer account, which is the name of the action that I created. Then for this scenario, all we're doing is posting a message to a chat or channel, letting interested parties know that when this action has been taken, we can post a message giving the account and taking the input parameter, the account name from those input parameters, and posting that in the message to let those interested parties know that this account has been approved. So invoking this, since we're not using invoking this from a plugin, we can invoke this directly. And when we look at the metadata, we see that when this custom API has been created, it then is included in the metadata of our overall API. So if we search through our metadata, we can see that this action is now included here. And we see the parameters with the names, account name, included in the metadata of our API. So let's see how we can invoke this. We will call this, this is the organization URI for my Dataverse environment with the additional URL, and this is the name of the action. In the body of my request, we use those request parameters. So I'm going to give it an ID. This is the account name that has been approved. And once all of that is entered, we click send, and that makes a post call against this API. We get a 204 back because I didn't include any response parameters in this, but it did complete successfully. So then let's look at Teams and see that this was just approved. This message was just created from the admin user, invoked by that action, triggering that flow. So fairly quickly, we can set up a custom API that invokes business logic and triggers some action, either through Power Automate or by setting up additional plugins to trigger additional flows based on that action taken within the system. So this demo that we just walked through shows the custom API functionality in Dataverse that is the implementation of business events in Dataverse. So with that background of how that's implemented on the Dataverse side, we can see how we're able to bring Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations together with Power Platform using the custom API by synchronizing business events and data events from Finance and Operations into Microsoft Dataverse. So looking at this from a architectural standpoint, we see Finance and Operations, we have Microsoft Dataverse and our endpoints. In Finance and Operations, we have business events, and business events aren't new technology on the Finance and Operations side. We have categorized business events with these event categories. But now with Microsoft Dataverse and the Power Platform integration, we are automatically synchronizing those event categories into the custom API catalog in Microsoft Dataverse. Those business events that exist in the business event catalog and new data events are being synchronized into catalog assignments, so they can then be used and sent to endpoints. These can be used across Power Platform by using Power Automate, or additionally to Azure endpoints like Event Grid, Service Hub, and Event Hub, or out to webhooks. So by having this business logic, the events that are happening in Finance and Operations, and having the capability to send those to catalog assignments and out to those additional endpoints, creates those integration touch points to bring together your applications and in your development scenarios. So let's quickly see what that looks like in Finance and Operations and Power Platform, just to see what that structure looks like when we get into the application. So if we get into Finance and Operations and we look up the business event catalog, we'll see that this is the list of events that have been created in Finance and Operations, categorized for the events and business logic that it can occur and be used as triggers for additional integrating applications. This list itself is not new. This is functionality that has been around for a few years, but what is new and what is only available when you have the Power Platform integration enabled for this finance and operations environment is the tab next to it, the Data Event Catalog. The Data Event Catalog is the list of all, created, updated, and deleted operations that can occur for the virtual entities available in this finance and operations environment. So you'll have thousands of potential events on all of your virtual entities and any created, deleted, or updated operation can be a trigger for business logic. And we can activate this and send it to an endpoint that gets synchronized into Dataverse. But if we jump over into the Power Platform and look at Dataverse, let's scroll down into our list of solutions. And when in this environment, we see the Dynamics 365 ERP Virtual Entities solution. This solution is created automatically in your linked Power Platform environment when the Power Platform integration is enabled. In this solution, this is the same solution that's used for creating virtual tables that have been enabled in this environment. And in this scenario, we see that I have selected to enable just 11 virtual tables for this environment. And these, the configuration for those virtual tables is done automatically when you select to enable the Power Platform integration for this environment. And additionally, when that's enabled, we can look at the catalog to see our custom API catalogs and see that all of the business event and data event categories from our finance and operations environment have automatically been synchronized with the solution in our Dataverse environment. These are the categories synchronized into our catalog. And when we look at the catalog assignments, we see the list of all of our business events and data events for virtual tables that have been enabled in this environment will be listed as catalog assignments. This then makes them available for use across in Power Automate or for registering plugins or other scenarios where you want to use these as triggers for business logic in your integrations. So for example, let's go look at flows in Power Automate. This is a scenario where, for example, we can use a data event to trigger when a new worker record is created in finance and operations. This can be selected as an event that triggers business logic within our flow in Power Automate. We would select the change type that we would want to trigger this activity. We would select the table, which is the worker MSERP virtual table, and the scope. And then whatever activity we want to occur after that. So in this scenario, it's a fairly straightforward scenario where we say anytime a worker is created, we want to send a welcome email to that new worker using the email address that's entered for that new worker. And that triggers the flow, and each time that data event of the record being created, the flow gets triggered. And this is functionality that's only available for finance and operations when that Power Platform integration is enabled. And thinking of enabling that Power Platform integration and that scenario in Power Automate, one of the exciting things is that opens up those data events to the entire ecosystem of connectors that exists for Power Automate. A lot of automated functionality that's already available there and can act as a trigger. We were using just a simple email, and we saw a previous example that posts to Teams, but the number of connectors really opens up the possibility for integrations of additional business logic that you want run within your organization just by virtue of having those connectors and being available in that ecosystem. So looking at the next area of this application that we want to talk through is developer tools. So we were looking at Power Automate as one of the available subscription options to subscribe to those data events. Another is if you are in a development environment, you can use the plugin registration tool or Power Platform tools add-in for Visual Studio, both of which are very similar experiences. plugin registration tool you would download from NuGet, and Power Platform tools you can get from the add-in library in Visual Studio. Both of them offer this functionality of being able to create and register plugins against these Dataverse custom APIs and business events, as well as data events. These then become available for you to act as triggers and then code that additional business logic. It enables registering the C# plugins for business events and data events. And one of the exciting things for the Convergence experience, especially for developers, finance and operations developers, it provides that single workspace for those developers to author customizations across platforms and applications. So finance and operations developers who are working in Visual Studio, this becomes that one workspace to author those customizations across Dynamics 365 apps and Dataverse for the finance and operations applications. So one more demo just to walk through this functionality and see how can we use this functionality of registering a plugin. What's a scenario where that can be useful in bringing finance and operations business logic into the Power Platform to act as a trigger for additional business logic? So we can create a plugin that registers steps against a Dataverse business event that runs additional business logic when the business event is invoked. In this scenario, we've added a custom field to our account list in our CRM hub that shows the account balance for each customer account. And we want to update this account balance every time a free text invoice is posted for that customer account. And we can do this by registering a plugin step against the free text invoice posted business event for finance and operations. We can do this in a couple ways. There is a plugin registration tool, as well as the Power Platform tools add-in for Visual Studio. Each of them provides a very similar experience for creating a plugin, and in this example, we'll use the Power Platform tools add-in for Visual Studio to see what this experience is like of creating a plugin. When you create a new project with the Power Platform tools add-in, there are a couple steps that I've already completed to authenticate and connect the project to your Dataverse environment. When the new project is created, the plugin base class is created automatically that implements the iPlugin interface, which is the base interface for your plugin. The next step then is from the View menu, open the Power Platform Explorer. From here, we could select to register a step against a data event for a table, for example, a create, update, or delete operation against the account table. In this case, we will look at the event catalog that shows us the list of business events created in this environment. We see our event catalogs that are available in the environment. We'll open finance and operations, select accounts receivable. And we see our free text invoice posted business event. We right click and add plugin. In the register new step dialog, we see the message, which is the business event that will trigger this plugin. These business events need to be asynchronous and happen after the operation is completed. So we'll leave all of this the same and click register new step. This creates a new class for our plugin that creates some additional base code that uses the iPlugin execution context to get the execution context from the service provider. Additionally, we have the iOrganization service interface that is going to be used for making those web service calls against our Dataverse environment. So a lot of the base code is created for us, and all that's left for us to do is write the code to implement the additional business logic that we want run when this code is invoked. So we will take this to do, and I've already written some code that I will paste in here. Now the code, the first thing it does is uses the input parameters of this business event. And these are the request parameters that if we go back into the Maker portal and look at this business event, we could see the request parameters that are available to be used. In this case, I'll use the invoice ID, the invoice amount, and the invoice account that'll be used later for our code. Here we see what we need to add a few namespaces to get this code to resolve correctly. So we'll scroll back up to the top and add these namespaces. Now that our namespaces are added, we can see that the code is resolving correctly. The next step after using our input parameters, we need to go get the current customer account balance, and that's the custom field that we've added. After we have our custom account balance, we do some quick math to add the invoice amount to the balance and then go update that account balance in the CRM hub. So once we have our code added here, we deploy. And we see that our deployment now completed successfully, deploying our plugin to our Dataverse environment. So let's go back into the Maker portal and see where we can see this. So we deployed to our demo custom API solution. And if we open the solution and look at plugin assemblies, we can see this is the update account balance plugin that we just registered. And we can click and view the step that was included in this new plugin, the MSERP Cust Free Text Invoice Posted Business Event. So we see that's been created correctly. Let's go test it out. Let's go into Finance and Operations. And I have created and saved this free text invoice for our customer Wide World importers. And they're going to purchase from us 250 widgets at $25 a piece. So that's entered, it's created, and then we'll go ahead and post. With posting completed, let's go back into our CRM hub and refresh our list. We see that our current balance for Wide World importers is $20,243.44. When we refresh, we see that that invoice amount has been added to the balance, so our plugin ran successfully, running the update against this account balance. So using the Power Platform tools add-in, we've been able to successfully create a plugin that runs additional business logic when a business event is invoked. So this demo gave us a good overview of the experience that you have when creating plugins directly against those data events that have been synchronized with the custom API catalog from Finance and Operations, giving you the ability to create those data or business logic integrations across the platforms. So looking at the overview of what we've covered in this session, and from that end-to-end experience, when you have that Power Platform integration enabled, it gives you the ability to streamline your setup with the configuration of your data integrations with dual write and virtual entities, speeding up your ability to get things up and running by synchronizing those users, by giving you ability to one-click add add-ins into your Finance and Operations environment, and then it gives you the functionality and ability to synchronize your business events and new data events, giving you those data events to enable you to do not only data integrations, but business logic integrations across the two platforms, bringing these platforms closer together. On this slide that we're looking at now, we up to this point, we've been talking about functionality that has been recently released in the 2021 release wave 2 for Dynamics 365. But as we look into the future of additional work that we're doing to bring these platforms together and continue the convergence of Finance and Operations with Dataverse, there's some more exciting stuff that we're looking into, especially around business events and this functionality that can be created to tighten the integration for the developer experience and create those additional user experiences. So future work that we have for data events and business events, being able to filter on legal entity for event registrations, to select the specific legal entity and filter that so that the callback registration from Finance and Operations will be limited just to those legal entities, but also be able to do that for multiple legal entities or companies, so that it's not a separate callback registration per company, but you can do that in a single registration against multiple companies to be able to select or multi-select the companies that you want to have applied for this for your business events and data events. The next feature that we're working on, there's a lot of opportunity in process mining and process insights. And business events, if we think about business events as things that happen within the organization. This is very different than documents that are created within the organization, which opens up opportunities for business process analysis. That your end-to-end business processes, like your procure to pay, your order to cash, your hire to retire, any of your field service scenarios, any of these scenarios or end-to-end business processes that you have in your organization are a sequential series of business events that happen in that organization. And the platform, there's a huge opportunity for us with business events and these data events to be able to create that end-to-end sequential series of events for analysis. That right now with the platform, when we fire off these events, it's a fire and forget, that we fire off that event and into whoever is subscribed to it, whoever's listening for that event, but then it's gone. There's opportunity for us if we can persist that in a data lake and have that a sequential series of end-to-end business events persisted in that data lake. We can use tools like Power Automate's Process Advisor to do process analysis and pull that together and see how are organizations doing their business processes, how are different groups, how are different countries across your organization doing these processes different? Where are the bottlenecks? How do we streamline and optimize these business processes? How can we pull in KPIs to see what happens when various KPIs are applied to these scenarios? And how do we, once we understand where those bottlenecks are, create automations to help optimize and continue to improve our business processes? All of this analysis can be done if we have that persisted sequential series of events of these business events being emitted by your finance platform and through Dataverse. So that's an opportunity that we're looking at and early on in that investigation, but looking for feedback from the customer and partner community on scenarios where you would use this and how we can make sure that this platform is built to help you successfully analyze your business processes. Along with that, we would enable the possibility to have a common event model for the base event schema of these events being sent to that lake for the persisted sequential series of events for that analysis, and having that a common event model that any organization, any application can use to send these events and participate in that analysis. So these are upcoming features that we're excited about, in addition to others that will be available when you enable the Power Platform integration. The final note is the call to action. As we mentioned throughout the session, if you haven't enabled the Power Platform integration, please take the opportunity to do so. Whether it's starting out in a sandbox environment or a development environment, just looking at the functionality that's available to become familiar with it. This is going to be a continuous platform development for us to improve the integration and bringing these platforms together in this convergence between finance and operations and Power Platform. So take a look at what's available and let us and give us feedback on it. Use the functionality to extend your applications using those business events, using those new data events. And when you are doing so, send feedback to us. We want to hear your thoughts. We have an email address set up for our team, FinOps Business Events at Microsoft.com, that comes directly to the product team for feedback, but also use any forum that you have available to you for providing feedback, whether it's in our Yammer groups, or whether it's the ideas site, or whether it's any of the community forums that are available. We want to hear your thoughts and make sure that as we continue to develop these features, we're doing so with the customer in mind and making sure we're targeting the scenarios that are important to you. And with that, we have a few minutes left, and we will go, Sudhakar and Rahul, let's open it up for questions.
Yeah, we have been answering the questions on the chat and publishing them, so I can, there are no new questions at the moment, but I can go over a few common ones that I think are worth discussing. So one of the questions is, am I right in assuming that we should have all business events, CE, field service on the same Power Platform environment? And the answer I think Sudhakar has given out already is FinOps business events are auto-synced to associated Dataverse. CEFS should also be on the same Dataverse environment. The next one is, can a commerce and finance environment both connect to the same Power Platform environment? So the answer is, if they are connected, if they are on the same finance and operation environment, then yes. If not, then they will connect to different Power Platform environments. There's a question around performance of the virtual data scenario. And so the latency for the virtual data is comparable to directly accessing the data. We can publish some performance benchmark numbers in our documentation, and this is something that we have been working through. Jared, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you covered it. It's performance and latency is always something that the team is concerned about, and it's something that will continue to be a focal point for us as we build this out. As we recognize that virtual entities and events that are built on those entities, this is still fairly new technology. Virtual entities are several years old already, but as we build it out and additional use cases begin to participate in that technology, we're going to see scenarios where it needs to scale greater than it does today. And that's going to be important. So if you are running into scenarios where you need it to be more performant and you're running into issues, please provide that feedback so we understand the need of where our performance benchmarks should be. We've published those performance benchmarks for what we have available today, but we'll continue to update those and continue to improve them as we go, and as we understand scenarios that need that additional scalability.
Thanks, Jared. The next question is around licensing. So if accessing the Power App from the Power App, we browse our app rather than embed into FNO, is this user still covered under the seeded license from FNO, or does the user need a per user license to access the premium Dataverse actions? So the answer is the same FNO license will work in Dataverse. You don't need any additional license to make it work. There's another question on license around, does the license and the user creation apply to SCM, commerce, and HR, or only the finance license? So I think I've answered it saying that, whether it's an SCM, commerce, or finance app, as long as the environment's connected to Power Platform, it should still work with the same license. I think we're still working on the HR. I don't have a clear answer at the moment, something we can potentially put in our documentation. Unless, Jared, you want to add to that?
Sorry, so the question is whether the Power Platform integration is enabled for the HR application?
That is correct, yes.
It is not yet today. Dynamics 365 Human Resources is based on the Finance and Operations platform, but is on its own infrastructure. And they're actually going through a process right now to merge their infrastructure with Finance and Operations. And when that project is completed, when Human Resources becomes part of the Finance and Operations infrastructure, they will then be able to take up this new capability of the Power Platform integration. They'll get the data events, they will get all the synchronization with Power Platform, and all of this will just light up just by virtue of being part of the finance and operations infrastructure. So that is upcoming. Their team can provide updates on the timeline for when that infrastructure project will be completed, but there's huge value there that they're looking forward to, but it's just a big project that has a lot of steps to be taken to complete that issue.
Thanks, Jared. And I think with that, I'll hand it back to David to close out.
All right, thank you, Rahul. I've posted a link to a short survey in the Q&A panel. We'd like your feedback on today's session and hear what you'd like to see in future events. Thank you for your participation. As a reminder, the recording of today's session will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenters and audience for joining us today.